A good set of IP68 communication headsets can cost as much as $1,000 each. If you need 2 or 3 pairs, that's a lot of money. Another YouTube channel, linked to below, showed me how to make them for a lot less, but I found I had to modify them a little bit from her build for my riding style. This is how to make my version. I'm using the FOD Sports M1S Plus, a generic set of headset covers, and some 30 decibel hearing protection. I already have a pair of these that I've made. I'm showing you here, this is what the end product is going to look like, a little bit different color, but pretty much basically the exact same thing. We start by disassembling the hearing protection that's going to be the chassis for our headset. These things are put together just basically with compression. Some parts of it come apart easier than others. You'll notice I lay everything out in the shape and form for which it's going to go back together and be assembled. These headsets turned out to be very difficult to pull apart, and inside was a component that we won't need for our rebuild. I put those in my reuse pile. Once I have my components laid out, I go ahead and I open up the FOD Sports. Inside has pretty much everything you need and then some. The unit itself that we don't need yet. And all the parts and components like the headset, the microphone, the little sticky pads that you need to stick those parts on, and a metal bracket for holding the actual FOD Sport unit itself with the different adhesives and charging cords and audio cables. These FOD Sports units are designed to be installed in both a closed face helmet or an open face helmet, so you have components for each of those. So after going through everything and finding the parts and pieces I need, I lay everything out with the chassis layout already on my workstation. I put the FOD Sport controller on the left hand side of these headsets so that I can keep my throttle hand on the throttle while I ride. Making the inserts for the headsets themselves requires a special tool. There's probably other ways you can do this. I chose to take a hole punch, pretty much available anywhere, and use that to cut out a circular indentation through the foam, about halfway. You can make a tool out of a sharpened piece of pipe if you want to. Alternately, you could cut a hole all the way through the foam and mount the headset driver directly to the clamshell of the hearing protection using the included Velcro adhesive pads. Cut a slice all the way through the back of the hole that you've made and insert the driver and tuck that into the cavity. Be very careful because the foam will break off and pop in your hands. Here you can see me installing one of the ear drivers, and I'm also installing my mark of shame on the other driver, doing exactly what I just cautioned you against. I pulled too hard on the foam and shame. Now we're going to dig out the little piece of metal that the FOD Sports contraption actually clicks to, and we're going to install that on one of our clamshells of the chassis. Determine the best way that this metal mounting bracket is going to fit on your clamshell and mark it or remember it somehow. Then using one of the double-sided mounting pads, mount it to the clamshell. Because of the abuse these things are going to take, I'd take every precaution with this glue, and I clean the clamshell surface with alcohol. I'm using a 99% pure rubbing alcohol to clean the surface and remove any contaminants so that adhesive has the best chance to stick. Of course, if you use a Sharpie to mark where your mounting plate is going to go, the alcohol will remove that. So I memorized geographically by the marks on the clamshell itself where my mounting plate was going to go. Remove the backing and then stick it to the clamshell that's been prepped. Give it a good firm pressure all over. For the typical rider, the adhesive itself is strong enough. But if you like looking for the biggest wakes possible, or you go out in rough weather specifically to get airborne, you're going to want to rivet these and support that glue in an additional mechanical way. So I go ahead and I drill a hole and I install 3/16 stainless steel pop rivets through the metal mounting bracket. While the adhesives used are perfectly adequate for motorcycles and freshwater rain, they won't hold up to the salt water and the type of riding that I personally enjoy. Since I've added rivets to my connection points, I've had no problems whatsoever with my headsets. The module receiver bracket slides down onto the metal mounting bracket. While this piece of plastic clicks into place on the metal, I added an additional piece of double-sided tape in between the mounting and receiver brackets. For the next part, we have to reassemble our ear cushions into the clamshells until they snap into place. There will be 3 holes that we mark on the left-hand side and 1 on the right. The 3 on the left are for the speaker cable, for the USB cable that comes out of the bottom, and 1 more for the mic cable, which I'll show you in just a second. These holes are going to go through the clamshell and through the plastic of the earpieces. We're going to turn these holes into grooves. After you determine what size bit you want to use for your wires, which I went a little bit larger than the wires themselves, go ahead and drill the holes. Once the holes are drilled, go ahead and pull the earpieces out of the clamshells. I just used the drill and drill bit that I've been using to create slots out of those holes. I clean up any burrs with a razor knife. This is kind of the tricky part. Once we have our grooves cut, we want to insert our foam inserts and put the wires into our slots. When we put these pieces together, we don't want to pinch the wire and cut it because it will cause failure. So very carefully put this thing together. I do the right ear first because it's simpler, and then I move on to the left ear. The left ear is a little more complicated because we have a lot of stuff going on inside of that earpiece. As with the other earpiece, drill out the slots. Once we've drilled our holes and turned those holes into slots on that left-hand earpiece, we can go ahead and lay out for our mic location. That will inform us where we're going to drill the hole for the mic cable to go into this clamshell. Because I've destroyed these mics before, I make sure I leave this connection point outside of the actual assembly so that if I destroy one in the future, I can easily replace it. The mic cable hole is going to be determined by the size of the actual connection point, and it's larger than the other cables. Once you're comfortable with the size and location of the hole, go ahead, drill it, and deburr it. Assembly of the left earpiece is a little bit more complicated. There's an entire wire harness going inside of this clamshell, so I found electrical tape is definitely a good friend to hold all these wires in place while I put things together. We want to locate our USB to the bottom of this clamshell. The wire for the actual speaker driver goes to the top, and we want to stick that mic cable out through the hole we just made. I'm making a mistake right here, which you'll see at the end of the video, by not leaving enough of that USB cable sticking out of the bottom. While this tape is like a third hand and it helps you put this entire component together, it will prevent you from being able to pull out that additional 1/4 inch of wire should you need it. So it's something you want to be prepared for now, and make sure that you have enough wire sticking out. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to pull this thing back apart after you've already got it together. Again, you're going to want to be very careful when you put this earpiece back into the clamshell, not to pinch those wires. The microphone has a Velcro sticky back. We're going to take a piece of the included Velcro adhesive pad and mount that thing to the clamshell. You may have to modify it a little bit to make that thing lay flat. One of the things I learned with this build is that the newer FOD Sports have a shorter mic. So you may want to take that clamshell and hold it over your ear and to help locate where the base of that microphone is going to sit. I like that microphone to come around and sit right around where my upper lip is. And these newer, shorter ones don't necessarily do that when they're mounted in the same location as the older ones. Just like with that mounting bracket, we're not going to trust the adhesive alone on this. We're going to come back through after mounting this microphone, and we're going to add some rivets. Once we're happy with the location of that mic and everything is assembled, we're going to go ahead and reassemble the whole clamshell. Again, we just want to be real careful with those wires while we reassemble it so that we don't pinch anything and destroy it through negligence, like the foam of that earpiece. Really, the only consolation I've got about that piece of foam is that nobody's going to see it except the person wearing it. Of course, I know it's there. Once we've got everything together, inspect it. If you like it, go ahead, lay it out like it's going to go back together. We're going to go ahead and snap the band on the top. On this particular set of hearing protection, these things did not go together easily. It was a lot more work putting them together than it was pulling them apart. At this point, we want to go ahead and protect our speaker wire using the generic headphone headbands that we bought. Make sure you get some that have a zipper so they're easy to install. If it's a tube type that you have to disassemble everything and install it, it's not going to work. These you can go ahead, install over the existing headband, and insert the wire and then simply zip it up. Now we're ready to install our FOD Sport module into the bracket on the side and plug in all the wires. These things literally just click right into that plastic receiver. You want to make sure that it clicks solidly. If you're a rider like me, that thing will bounce out as soon as you come off the top of a wave and slap it pretty hard. So you want to make sure that thing is clicked in solidly. Here you can see where that USB is just not long enough to stick in there. Of course, you don't want to force a wire, you'll destroy the connections. So after this point, I had to pull everything apart just to ease that USB cable just a little bit. While the USB port itself has a rubber gasket to keep water out, the mic cable does not. So I use a little bit of dielectric grease before putting this thing together to keep the salt water from getting in there and corroding everything. Inspect everything, make sure everything fits and works the way that you want it to. It's going to stay together and withstand the abuse you're going to give them before you pull things apart and make any adjustments that you may need to do. But that's about it. Once you have it all together, you're good to go. Pair those things up, get out, get on the water, have some fun. And if you fail to keep it hull side down, make sure you fail safely. I hope this helped. Toodles.